systems that make people more economically productive. Now, if this can work for Poland, a country with a rather comprehensive list of genuine macroeconomic challenges, the most logical action would be to take what's working there and replicate it across the rest of Europe. Current global economic factors might, in a perverse way, force the EU to take these ideas more seriously. But it's also important to acknowledge that Poland is by no means flawless. For all its success, is still well behind many of the more established European economies, which themselves have fallen significantly behind the USA as a logical point of comparison. In an environment like the EU, catching up is arguably easier. But getting ahead? That's another challenge entirely. If Poland truly wants to turn its economic success into an economic miracle, it will need to keep growing. And to keep growing, it must offer something that stagnating economies in Europe cannot. So, what have been the driving forces of Poland's growth? What challenges could potentially halt this miracle? And finally, how is Poland differentiating itself from its more mature EU peers? As Poland and other Warsaw Pact countries broke away from the Eastern Bloc in the 1990s, many struggled with severe economic hardship. After all, if everything in the Cold War economy had been going well for Mother Russia, there wouldn't have been a need for reform in the first place. Out of desperation, most newly independent states introduced economic shock therapy, transitioning from centrally planned economies to free market systems. In many cases, existing institutions were failing. What set Poland apart was the way it transitioned from public to private control. Rather than adopting immediate, arbitrary measures, Poland favored slow, competitive changes. This proved to be one of the most important decisions it could have made. Countries like Russia, Ukraine, Hungary, and Moldova opted to rip the Band-Aid off quickly, leaving them vulnerable to unchecked oligarchies seizing control of privatized industries. Poland's approach, while sharing the same end goal, was more multifaceted. Instead of selling off state assets to a select few, it organized public offerings, encouraged foreign investment, and introduced employee stock ownership plans. Without a tight circle of monopolists calling the shots, Poland's developing marketplace was driven to reduce corruption through new policies. Choosing a slower transition helped prevent a chaotic race to the finish line. Newly privatized businesses were encouraged to compete with pre-existing, government-owned companies. These small victories were initially overlooked. Poland's GDP per capita at the time was just $1.70, less than 10% of what was seen in the West. However, the gap has narrowed significantly, while other countries that once dwarfed it have begun to stagnate. Today, with a population of around 40 million, Poland has attracted significant attention from economists. Some argue it could become a lifeline for Europe in the coming decades. Projections suggest Poland may continue to see strong growth through 2030. Several factors have contributed to this growth. Poland's long-time EU membership has arguably benefited it more than any other country. It's the largest recipient of EU cohesion funds, totaling €213 billion, $220 billion USD, and that number is expected to grow through 2027. However, this assistance could bring complications. While helpful, free labor movement within the EU has also led many of Poland's most talented workers to migrate to richer countries for better pay and working conditions. This is compounded when struggling countries are tied to a currency kept high by wealthy export economies like Germany. In economic crisis, these countries can't devalue their currency as they might if they had their own. This issue was particularly evident in Greece and Spain during the global financial crisis and the Eurozone crisis. If these countries had maintained their own currencies, their debts may have been more manageable, and their exports and tourism more competitive. But with the euro, that didn't happen. Even in less extreme cases, setting monetary policy that suits both slow, established economies like Germany and fast-growing ones like Poland is nearly impossible without compromise. To be clear, this isn't an indictment of the Eurozone. Generally, the benefits have outweighed the costs, especially for growing economies like Poland. But it's important to acknowledge that those costs do exist. There are several major advantages to unveil membership. The single market promotes the free movement of goods, services, and capital, increasing consumer confidence and healthy competition. It gives member countries an incentive to work toward common goals. Furthermore, some argue the EU has been unfairly blamed for economic stagnation. The UK, for example, has faced similar struggles post-Brexit to those seen in the Eurozone. Without geo-cooperation, Poland almost certainly wouldn't be where it is today. What sets Poland apart is how it participates. Poland has refused to adopt the euro as its official currency, technically separating it from the Eurozone while still functioning within many of the UE's structures. This has allowed Poland to retain greater monetary autonomy, helping it manage inflation and exchange rates more effectively. They still feel the effects of the region's economic highs and lows, just to a lesser extent. More importantly, they've used the funding wisely, often more conscientiously than other recipients. Over the past decade, Poland has done a good job diversifying its economy, prioritizing services and technology. Its automotive industry, for example, has become its fourth largest employer, accounting for 1% of industrial output and 4% of GDP. This has attracted foreign direct investment from companies like Fiat, Toyota, and Volkswagen, especially as the industry pivots to electric vehicles. Poland has also positioned itself as a potential tech hub for Europe, an area where many countries have struggled. Its ICT, Information and Communications Technology, sector has grown to $26.5 billion, with year-on-year growth over 4%. This has strengthened GDP in a high-value, technical field. A growing pool of skilled labor, 430, employees and 66 students enrolled in ECT studies, shows continued investment in education. Still, Poland faces the risk of a middle-income trap. Despite progress, it has struggled to reach high-income status when measured by purchasing power parity. This has historically led to brain drain. To combat this, Poland has implemented policies like reduced income tax for workers under 26 since 2019. But it's not just about tax incentives. Programs like Digital Poland aim to enhance digital capabilities, support startups, and improve infrastructure. Cities like Warsaw, Kraków, and Wrocław have become growing tech hubs. These efforts have fueled technical innovation, which attracts young talent. While German salaries may be higher, Poland's pitch to young professionals is different. Contribute to cutting-edge projects and grow in a less rigid environment. Salaries are lower, but so is the cost of living, meaning quality of life is still high. This strategy has been a win-win for Poland. Even without reaching high-income status, it's becoming a kind of Silicon Valley for Europe, attracting both foreign and domestic investment. Another contributor to Poland's growth is military spending. Poland is among NATO's top military spenders, alongside countries like Lithuania and Greece. This trend is likely to accelerate as Europe seeks greater defense autonomy. This isn't a military channel, but spending is spending. Poland is recruiting nearly 500,000 troops and signing major contracts for military equipment. Shifting toward European contractors could create industrial opportunities. This investment brings both benefits and burdens. Military spending has grown over 300% in a decade. Though much is one-time hardware acquisition, long-term maintenance is costly. Reversing such spending is difficult, especially with the war in Ukraine so close. To manage this debt, Poland has used complex financial tools like the Armed Forces Support Fund, bonds, and budget adjustments. Still, fiscal strain is likely. Yet war also boosts the economy in some ways, reducing unemployment and creating civilian sector job opportunities later. New bases mean new infrastructure, roads, hospitals, cybersecurity, benefiting even non-military sectors. Poland is also diversifying its energy sources to reduce reliance on Russian fossil fuels. It's building its first nuclear power plant, a long-term investment that supports future prosperity. From R&D to infrastructure to fiscal strategy, Poland has earned the headlines. Yet it still lags behind truly developed nations like Germany, France, and the Netherlands. So, is Poland playing catch? Or can it surpass these stagnant giants? No one can predict the future, but Poland is outperforming other middle-income countries. It may even surpass Spain soon. Germany remains dominant in Europe, but is grappling with energy and growth challenges. France has a high debt-to-GDP ratio. Poland's military spending may have softened its pandemic recession more than its neighbors. But future DBT concerns loom, especially if funding slows. Poland's lower wages currently attract foreign manufacturers. If wages rise to match Western Europe, that advantage may disappear. Poland's growth has been impressive and encouraging. But surpassing leading nations is a tall order. Much of its success depends on the very economies it hopes to outgrow. Still, Poland is playing its cards extremely well. If it can maintain innovation, reward its workforce, and avoid excessive debt, it could become a major regional power and a model for the rest of Europe. Thanks for reading.